For people who haven't read your most recent column, what'd they miss?
Basically trying to make the point that, when you take a step back and look at all the things that are going wrong with the Knicks these days, and Phil Jackson's decisions in management certainly are part of that, it's a lot of evidence now to who Carmelo Anthony is and how much will to win there is within him. A lot of progress made last season as far as sharing the ball, trying to take more of a team mentality for Carmelo, and he's regressed back to the same old this season. And, along with it, the lack of teamwork has followed with the Knicks. And so I just think it's fair to cast a light on that. I know Phil's sort of become the whipping boy for the whole New York media, but Carmelo has to shoulder some blame in that also.
All right, so you press said it's out there, and Phil Jackson subtweets you, where he writes he hadn't tweeted in a month and a half, and he writes, "Bleachers ding almost rings the bell, but I learned you don't change the spot on a leopard with Michael Graham in my CBA days." By the way, he wrote days, D-A-Z-E, which I love, but I also think is funny and interesting, and definitely did it on purpose. Okay, so what do you take his subtweet to mean?
Doug, I'd say one thing is Phil sort of disagrees with one of the aspects of the column in that I say he overestimated his ability to sort of convert Carmelo from whoever he is to be more like Kobe or Michael, where they were scorers first, but they learned how to play the team way. I think Phil did have that in mind, but Phil's pointing out, I think anyway, that he sort of knew who Carmelo was all along. He knew when he signed up with the Knicks. He knew when he re-signed Carmelo with the Knicks. And he knows even now that amid all this trade talk that there are certain limitations to Carmelo, and Phil is willing to work with them however best he can.
Okay, well, you said
he's trying to make that point.
Okay, now you don't take it to mean that he's a leopard never changed his spots. He's just not that competitive. He's just not that guy, and that won't change.
No, I do take it that way, and those are the 2 points to take away from it. Is that he is agreeing with that premise of the column, but he's just basically saying, I knew that, and we're trying to deal with it. So the problem comes in where he's affirming there's a problem with Carmelo, and that's why everybody's going crazy. I understand it completely.
I don't know if you read this, but because it came out. There's two stories coming out about Adrian Wojnarowski. One, that he may be leaving, going to ESPN, which is like a Woj bomb on a guy who usually drops Woj bombs. And then there's this from Adrian Wojnarowski, still of Yahoo Sports, that Knicks president Phil Jackson's public campaign to pressure Carmelo Anthony into waiving his no-trade clause is working to harden Anthony's resolve to remain with the franchise. Jackson's underestimating Melo's willingness to stay, says a source familiar with Anthony's thinking told The Vertical. And this, of course, refers to your article and his tweet about the article. And in other words, what he's saying is like, look, Phil Jackson's only tweeting about your article and pointing out his flaws because he wants Melo to know that he doesn't think he's. Anthony has privately indicated an interest in listening to trades to those three teams, but said the Knicks have been unable to find a package that they're willing to accept. He also said Anthony has privately told teammates, too, he refused to let Jackson run him out of the Knicks. So the idea is, like, he thinks the reason, and his people think the reason that he's subtweeting you is he's trying to run him out of town.
Yeah, and I think that's the from a cynical perspective, that's the basic easy explanation for it is, why would he do something like this? Well, he needs to figure out a way to get Carmelo to waive that no-trade clause so he can get him out of town. And that's certainly one interpretation. I'm just saying that there's.
Is there any other interpretation? Is there any other interpretation of it? Because that would seem to diminish the market value of a player. Although, again, the market value kind of is what it is. By now, everybody knows who Carmelo Anthony is. Like, it's an interesting tactic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's right there. That's another question, Doug. Is it why would he do it if he's really trying to trade him? Because it does diminish his value. So right there is one argument against it being a deliberate attempt to say we got to get Carmelo out of here. So I mean, Phil does things in very vague and confusing ways sometimes, very unconventionally. And so, to me, I think there is sort of an acknowledgement of Carmelo's faults, but to me, I think Phil thinks that those are obvious to the world by now, that those should be obvious to the world, even though, we as sports fans are consumed with scoring and the beauty of the ball going through the basket. Certainly, Doug, and hardcore basketball people know there's so much more to it, and Carmelo hasn't grown his game in those directions. So Phil's saying, well, look, that is the reality. I'm trying to deal with it. I was never foolish enough to think that he was, more than just that, So maybe he's also saying, look, those are his spots, and I can work with them.